Good afternoon. I will call this Broadwater County Planning Board meeting to order. If everyone would rise and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I have a small announcement to make this today. Been talked or asked if we would talk into the mics very well today. Dalene's had trouble hearing us when she's trying to do the meeting, the minutes afterwards. So whenever you're talking, come up and use the mics, please, and talk into them. All right. Is there any public comment on anything not on the agenda today? Is there any public comment for anything not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, everybody get a chance to read the minutes of their last meeting?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes of the last meeting? Seeing none, can I have a motion to accept them?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded to accept the minutes for the June 17th meeting. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. So for new business, we have the discussion decision on the Fairview Minor Subdivision. Now, we have not had this staff report written in or read in yet, right?
No, sir. I don't believe we did. I don't believe I did read it into the record. We gave, I gave an overview of it at the last meeting. And so, yeah, whatever you would, however you would like me to proceed, sir.
Well, let's go ahead and if you would give the staff report.
Okay, great. Does everybody have their copy? I guess let's make sure. Okay.
I don't. I'm sorry.
Nope, no worries. I'm gonna talk amongst
You got
yourself. I'm
yours?
gonna go make copies though.
I thought I had it.
Oh, I got, no, that's the wrong one. That was for counts.
Yeah, this one should be Fairview.
Sometimes they get away from me. I have too many meetings.
Do they
I
grow?
go to.
Do they grow legs?
Well, and then it's like, well, which meeting was that?
Have you read the signs minutes yet?
I can do that since we're waiting.
Okay.
Evidently my watch is dying on me because I don't have the date anymore. Good thing it's the 1st. So I can remember that.
Easy peasy.
Do you happen to know where there's copy paper?
I
Out
don't
here.
It's only 25 pages long.
Yeah.
You got this part, but you don't have the,
Yes, sir.
you don't have the other part, huh?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Well, it's time to get that off. They're trying to get me to sign up for Medicare.
It's a good deal.
They come from all kinds of numbers, too.
Yes.
I got one yesterday from Helena. The same stupid thing.
Because I think because of the issues.
I recently signed up in April, and I just took the Medicare Advantage through Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and I get to go see the doctors over here
She told Rick.
and everything like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Blue Cross and Blue Shield Advantage,
think
Mm-hmm.
so everything is just
Cool.
goes to Helena for approval, and
yes,
but
isolation's out.
allowed
Well,
me
that's
to,
nice.
yeah, allowed me to,
My neighbors go to see
You stay local there that way, anyway.
yeah.
so.
You gonna make training tonight?
No, they will be.
Tomorrow night? Not tonight, tomorrow night.
Oh, I might be able to. Yeah, I don't think we've got church group. Yeah. Should be able to make it.
We'll be at Toston, so,
Meet at Tossin.
yeah.
Okay. At 7?
Yep.
Okay.
Are we on pause or are we still live? We're still live? Okay. This must be exciting to be watching.
There is no option to pause. I can stop, but then it takes me a few minutes to restart everything.
As long as they don't start calling and say, how come nothing's moving?
Right.
Well, Mr. Chair, we don't have any viewers at this
Oh,
point in time.
okay. They knew what was gonna happen, see?
You're getting fancy yellow paper because I couldn't find it. Oh, wait.
Thank you so much.
I've got it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome.
Oh, thanks.
All right. This is the staff report of the Fairview Minor Subdivision. This was posted online as well as emailed to planning board members. You have each planning board member has your Fairview Minor Subdivision application. Hopefully, if not, I certainly have one that you can feel free to look at. So with that, I will get right into the staff report. The date of application was May 7th, 2025. The review period will end July 22nd of 2025. This is currently scheduled to go on the Commissioner's July 16th, 2025 agenda. Subdividers are Rick and Connor Knapp of Gig Harbor, Washington. Subdividers representative is Christy Heineman of Townsend, Montana, who is here in attendance today. Legal description. This property is situated in Section 12, Township 6 North, Range 2 East in Broadwater County. Executive summary. Subdivider intends to create one lot from an existing 16.28 acre parcel with an agricultural covenant in place. This lot will be used for agricultural and residential purposes. Wastewater will be provided via an individual on-site wastewater treatment system. Water will be provided via an individual on-site well. Access will be provided from Duck Creek Road. The required preliminary review fee of $1,000 has been paid. The request is for approval of the one-lot minor subdivision for one single-family home. Staff recommends approval of the proposed Fairview minor subdivision preliminary plat, subject to the conditions of approval based on the recommended findings of fact included in the staff report. Location. The proposed subdivision is located off of Duck Creek Road, approximately 11 miles northeast of the city of Townsend. Existing development and uses. This property is currently agricultural land. Lands to the north and west are agricultural. Lands to the south and east are agricultural and residential. Public comment will be taken at the June 17th Planning Board regular business meeting and subsequent commissioner meetings. I would like to amend that, if I may, to add today's date of July 1, 2025 Planning Board meeting, because we certainly will be taking public comment at today's meeting, should there be any. Project background. Water is proposed to be provided via an individual well. Although a well is already installed, the well site will be reviewed and approved by the Department of Environmental Quality. Wastewater is proposed to be managed utilizing an individual wastewater treatment system. DEQ will review and approve the location of the wastewater treatment system. Access will be off of Duck Creek Road at County Road. Staff analysis. Review is performed pursuant to the Montana Subdivision Platting Act, Title 76, Chapter 3, Montana Codes Annotated, the 2025 Broadwater County Subdivision Regulations, and the 2024 Broadwater County Growth Policy. The proposed preliminary plat, Fairview Minor Subdivision, as submitted by the subdivider, together with the required supplementary plans and information, appear to satisfy the requirements of these regulations and comply with the Broadwater County Growth Policy, with the suggested mitigating conditions. Criteria for review. In accordance with 76.36083 MCA, a subdivision proposal must undergo review for impacts on the following primary criteria. Number 1, agriculture. 2, agricultural water user facilities. Number 3, local services. 4, natural environment. 5, wildlife and wildlife habitat. 6, public health and safety. 7, compliance with the county subdivision regulations. 8, compliance with survey requirements. 9, the provision of easements within and to the proposed subdivision for the location and installation of any planned utilities. And 10, a provision providing legal and physical access to each parcel within the proposed subdivision. Findings in fact and conclusions. Impacts on agriculture. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'm not going to read through the definitions of these. I'm simply going to read the narrative and the finding, because the definitions we've gone over in previous meetings, and those definitions are from our subdivision regulations. So,
That's fine.
in the interest of preserving your time,
Yes.
I will talk less.
But you talk so well.
Skipping to number 2, narrative. According to the preliminary plat application, none of this property is considered prime farmland if irrigated. 3, finding. This proposed subdivision should not have an effect on agricultural productivity, since only the home site location is being removed from agriculture. Per Chapter 5A of the Broadwater County Subdivision Regulations, all subdivisions must be designed and developed to provide satisfactory building sites that properly relate to topography and must, to the extent possible, preserve the natural environment. Conditions of approval for the proposed subdivision will require a noxious weed management plan be on file and recorded with the final plat. Restrictive covenants providing notice of agricultural operations in the vicinity, that the property shall be maintained in a weed-free manner, and the restraining domestic pets on the property. Other conditions of approval will provide the opportunity to financially guarantee any improvements required by the weed management plan. Conditions of approval number 6, 8C, 8G, 8H, and 9 are required to mitigate impacts on agriculture. A full list of the conditions of approval is found starting on page number 10. Conclusion. The impacts to agriculture, as set forth in the findings of fact, will be mitigated by the imposed conditions of approval based upon the record when satisfactorily completed. Impacts on agricultural water user facilities. Narrative. The proposed subdivision will create one residential lot. Findings. The proposed subdivision should not have an impact on any agricultural water user facility, since only one residence will be added to the property. Conditions of approval numbers 8C, 8G, 8H, and 9 are required to mitigate impacts on agricultural water user facilities. Conclusion. The impacts to agricultural water user facilities, as set forth in the findings of fact, will be mitigated by the imposed conditions of approval based upon the record when satisfactorily completed. Impacts on local services. Narrative. The proposed subdivision is proposed to have access directly from Duck Creek Road. It is within the jurisdiction of the Broadwater County Sheriff's Office, as well as the Townsend School System. Fire protection will be offered by the Broadwater County Rural Fire District, namely from the Duck Creek Fire Station. Findings. Solid waste. The residents will haul their solid waste to Broadwater's solid waste canister site in Townsend, or they'll have the option of hiring an independent contractor to pick up their solid waste. Mail delivery. It is anticipated that mail will be delivered by the United States Postal Service, and plans for any mail receptacles on site are subject to review and approval by the Townsend Post Office. Utilities. It is anticipated that Northwestern Energy will provide electrical service to the proposed subdivision. Future dry utilities are anticipated to be installed underground. Roads and traffic. No transportation plan has been officially adopted for this area. The proposed development will likely not cause an impact to Duck Creek Road, but an approach permit must be requested from the Public Works Department for the driveway approach. The estimated average daily trips for one residence is 8 ADT. Schools. The proposed subdivision is served by the Townsend schools, and the subdivision could potentially produce 2 students. The potential for new students from this development should not have an impact on existing bus routes. Emergency services. The proposed subdivision is within the Broadwater Sheriff Department's jurisdiction. Due to the rural nature of this subdivision, response times for emergency services could be longer than expected. Fire services. The proposed subdivision is located within the Broadwater Rural Fire District. The nearest firehouse is the Duck Creek Fire Station, an unmanned volunteer firehouse. The subdivider will need to propose a fire protection plan for review and approval by the Broadwater Rural Fire District prior to final plat approval. Conditions of approval numbers 4, 5, 7, 8B, and 10 are required to mitigate impacts on local services. Conclusion. The impacts to local services, as set forth in the findings of fact, will be mitigated by the imposed conditions of approval based upon the record when satisfactorily completed. Impacts on the natural environment. Narrative. According to the preliminary plat application, the property is sloping to the north, with most of the property outside of the proposed building area having slopes in excess of 15%. Since the Broadwater County subdivision regulations only require the subdivided or disturbed areas to provide topography, the developer's representative only provided topography for the disturbed areas. A potential condition of approval could be that in the absence of topography for the entire parcel, the areas perceived to be in excess of 25% slope are shown as no-build zones, per the Broadwater County subdivision regulations. Duck Creek separates the buildable areas of this property from the areas of steep terrain. The proposed subdivision is outside of the FEMA mapped 100-year floodplain. Findings. The property is located within the Intermountain Seismic Belt that extends through western Montana and frequently produces small earthquakes and has previously developed some major earthquakes. Property damage and risk can be minimized with construction techniques and earthquake planning. Per Chapter 5B of the Broadwater County Subdivision Regulations, the design and development of subdivisions must provide satisfactory building sites which are properly related to topography and must, to the extent possible, preserve the natural environment. All grading, drainage, and erosion control shall be in compliance with Chapter 5J of the Broadwater County Subdivision Regulations. All post-development generated stormwater will be detained within the subdivision boundaries. A stormwater pollution prevention plan will be implemented and will remain in effect during the construction phase of this project and until disturbed soils are properly stabilized. The grading and drainage plan will be provided for review to the Environmental Health Officer. Per Chapter 5T of the Broadwater County Subdivision Regulations, a weed management plan shall be approved by the Broadwater County Weed Board prior to the subdivision application being considered complete. A noxious weed management plan has been completed by the developer, submitted and approved by the Broadwater County Weed Coordinator and the Broadwater County Weed Board. No critical plant species have been identified. Existing vegetation will only be disturbed for necessary construction of roads, driveways, utilities, and structures. Any construction disturbance will be reseeded with an approved grass seed mix. A weed management plan has been approved by the Broadwater County Noxious Weed District to control and prevent the growth of noxious weeds. The subdivider will be responsible for adhering to the weed management plan until all lots are sold or the responsibility is turned over to a homeowners association. A letter was received from the Montana Historical Society on April 7, 2025 for the Fairview Minor subdivision to determine if there are any known historical, cultural, or archaeological sites which may be affected by the proposed development. According to Damon Murdo, MHS Cultural Records Manager, there has been one previously recorded site within the designated area. The historic site consists of a finding of pre-contact lithic material concentration. However, according to Mr. Murdo, so long as there will be no disturbance or alteration to structures over 50 years old, there will be no cultural or historic properties affected by this subdivision. In summary, the State Historic Preservation Office does not believe a cultural resource inventory is warranted at this time. Conditions of approval numbers 6, 8C, and 10 are required to mitigate impacts on the natural environment. A full list of the conditions of approval is found starting on page number 10. Conclusion. The impacts on the natural environment as set forth in the findings of fact will be mitigated by the imposed conditions of approval based upon the record when satisfactorily completed. Impact on wildlife and wildlife habitat. Narrative. Wildlife such as antelope, mule deer, white-tailed deer, upland game birds, other small birds, rabbits, and other rodents likely utilize the proposed subdivision. However, there should be no displacement of wildlife since the surrounding area is residential and expansive agricultural property. Findings. The impacts on wildlife habitat will be negligible based upon the surrounding uses. Landowners are encouraged to install wildlife-friendly fencing, contain domestic animals, and secure solid waste to reduce wildlife incidents whenever possible. Conditions of approval numbers 8C and 8H are required to mitigate impacts on wildlife habitat. Conclusion. The impacts to wildlife habitat as set forth in the findings of fact will be mitigated by the imposed conditions of approval based upon the record when satisfactorily completed. Impact on public health and safety. Narrative. The proposed residence will be served by an on-site well. The residence will have its own wastewater system as well as stormwater retention basin. Water supply. The proposed subdivision is not within the service area of a public water system. The proposed lot will be served by an individual on-site water well according to the preliminary plat application. The use of this exempt well is subject to review and approval by the DNRC. Wastewater. Wastewater for the proposed subdivision will be provided by the use of an individual on-site wastewater treatment system, septic drain field. DEQ will review and issue approval for the lot for adequacy and impact of the wastewater system on groundwater quality. Stormwater. A stormwater retention plan will be created with concurrence by DEQ prior to final plat approval. Conditions of approvals numbers 5, 8C, 8D, 8E, 8F, and H are required to mitigate impacts on public health and safety. Conclusion. The impacts on public health and safety, as set forth in the findings of fact, will be mitigated by the imposed condition of approval based upon the record when satisfactorily completed. Compliance with subdivision regulations. Findings. The proposed subdivision meets all subdivision regulations, and it will remain in compliance with these regulations if all conditions of approval are satisfied. No variances have been requested. All conditions of approval are required to address compliance with the subdivision regulations. Conclusion. Compliance with the subdivision regulations, as set forth in the findings of fact, will be addressed by the imposed conditions of approval based upon the record when satisfactorily completed. Compliance with survey requirements. Findings. A land surveyor and plat completed by a registered land surveyor in the state of Montana will need to be prepared. A review of the plat by the Community Development Department and the examining land surveyor at the time of final plat application will ensure that the plat conforms to all conditions of approval, plat rules, and regulations. Condition of approval number 3 is required to address compliance with survey requirements. Conclusion. Compliance with survey requirements, as set forth in the findings of fact, will be addressed by the imposed conditions of approval based upon the record when satisfactorily completed. Provision of easements within and to the proposed subdivision for the location and installation of any planned utilities. Findings. Utility easements will have to be shown and described on the plat in accordance with the subdivision regulations and in consultation with the utility providers, where utilities are or will be installed and where necessary for the future extension of services. Conditions of approval number 7 is required to address the provision of easements within and to the proposed subdivision for the location and installation of planned utilities. Conclusion. The provision of easements within and to the proposed subdivision for the location and installation of any planned utilities as set forth in the findings of fact will be addressed by the imposed condition of approval based upon the record when satisfactorily completed. Provision of legal and physical access to each parcel within the subdivision. Findings. Legal and physical access to the subdivision is provided via Duck Creek Road, a county road. A county road approach permit must be applied for and approved prior to an address being assigned to the property. Conditions of approval number 7 is required to address the provision of legal and physical access to each parcel within the proposed subdivision. Conclusion. The provision of legal and physical access to each parcel within the proposed subdivision as set forth in the findings of fact will be addressed by the imposed conditions of approval based upon the record when satisfactorily completed. Recommended conditions. The Fairview Minor subdivision is recommended for approval with the following conditions. Number 1, any and all adopted state and county requirements and standards which apply to this proposed subdivision must be met unless otherwise waived for cause by the governing body. Number 2, plans for sewage treatment and water supply shall be submitted to the Department of Environmental Quality for review and approval. The letter of approval shall be filed with the final plat. All specifications in the approved plan shall be met. Number 3, the subdivider will be required to submit the preliminary and final plat drawings in electronic format to Broadwater County in ArcGIS, AutoCAD, or MicroStation format. Additional materials may be requested by the county in electronic format to facilitate review of application materials. Number 4, plans for the location and installation of individual mailboxes shall be reviewed and approved by the United States Postal Service prior to installation. The subdivider shall submit documentation from the United States Postal Service verifying their review and approval. When required, the subdivider shall provide an off-street area for mail delivery. The subdivider, its successors, and assigns shall be responsible for all costs associated with meeting this condition of approval. Number 5, prior to submitting the final subdivision plat application, the applicant shall complete a fire protection plan for the purpose of furthering fire protection. The fire protection plan shall be created with concurrence by the Broadwater County Rural Fire District. 6. Prior to any development and/or soil disturbance, the applicant shall submit a subdivision noxious weed management and revegetation plan for the proposed subdivision to the Broadwater County Weed District for review and approval. All specifications and requirements of the approved plan shall be met at the cost of the applicant. The applicant shall submit documentation to the Broadwater County Community Development Department from the Weed District verifying their review and approval. Number 7, the final plat shall be prepared in accordance with the applicable state survey requirements, Montana Subdivision and Platting Act survey requirements, and the county subdivision regulations. The final plat shall be in substantial compliance with the plat and plan submitted for preliminary plat review, except as modified by these conditions. The final plat shall provide for the following. A. Any areas in excess of 25% slopes on the property shall be identified as no-build zones. B. All existing and proposed utility easements on the subject property. And C. All existing access and utility easements adjacent to the subject property. 8. The book and page reference to the restrictive covenant filed with the county clerk and recorder shall be indicated on the face of the final plat. In addition, the foregoing restrictive covenants shall be placed upon the property and shall provide for the following. A. Notice is hereby given that this lot shall be used for residential purposes only per the subdivision application. B. Notice is hereby given that the owner of the lot, by acceptance of a deed, therefore, whether or not it shall be so expressed in such deed, waives the right to protest joining or the amendment of a rural improvements district for the installation, maintenance, preservation, and repair of the following: roads that provide access to the subdivision, stormwater improvements for the subdivision, fire protection improvements to the subdivision. C. Notice is hereby given that each lot shall be maintained in a weed-free manner, and a noxious weed and revegetation plan has been prepared for the subdivision and is on file with the Broadwater County Clerk and Recorder's Office. D. Notice is hereby given of the potential health risk from radon concentrations, and that such risk can be evaluated through soil tests and mitigated through radon abatement techniques incorporated into structures. E. Notice is hereby given that all structures within the subdivision should be constructed to specifications which meet or exceed equivalent provisions in the applicable state building code for this seismic zone, which is Zone 3. F. Notice is hereby given of a restrictive covenant binding the landowner, any heirs, successors, and assigns, and all future owners of property within the subdivision, agreeing therein to hold Broadwater County harmless and indemnify Broadwater County from all claims, demands, obligations, suits, causes of action, damages, and liability, including the county's costs and attorney's fees arising in any manner whatsoever out of or relating to the existence, use, operation, repair, and or maintenance of the following. Subitem 1, exposure to radon. 2, earthquake fault zone and any seismic activity. And 3, water availability. G. Notice is hereby given of the presence of agricultural operations in the vicinity, and such operations may occur at varying times and seasons and include but are not limited to the noises and odors due to the operation of machinery, the pasturing and feeding of livestock, irrigation, and the application of fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides to fields. H. Notice is hereby given that domestic pets should be restrained on the property at all times. 9. The subdivider shall include a notarized right to farm declaration with final plat affirming that no agricultural or farming operation, place, establishment, or facility, or any of its appurtenances, or the operation thereof, is or becomes a public or private nuisance because of the normal operations thereof, as a result of the changed residential or commercial conditions in or around the locality of the agricultural or farming operation, place, establishment, or facility has been in operation longer than the complaining resident has been in possession, or commercial establishment has been in operation. 10. Prior to submitting the final plat, the following improvements shall be installed or otherwise guaranteed. A. Any necessary improvements required by the stormwater drainage plan, weed management plan, fire protection plan, or approach permits. B. Installation of mail delivery facilities. And C. Utilities abutting and available to each lot. 11. Prior to the final plat approval, the applicant shall A. Provide proof that all real property taxes and special assessments assessed and levied on the property are paid for the current tax year, including any past delinquencies. And B. Provide documentation showing that the applicant is the lawful owner of the property with the apparent authority to subdivide the same, and showing the names of lien holders or claimants of record. And that concludes my SAC.
Thank you, Nicole. Is there any discussion on the staff report? Questions? Okay, seeing none.
There's this one, it's a nitpicky thing on page 5, sub-item 2. It makes it sound like it slopes to the north, but I understand what you're saying. The land to the north is sloping, but it slopes to the south. It's a south-facing slope.
Right.
So I don't know if it probably doesn't matter. I mean, but it's just in my brain, it was, I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah, I kind of saw that too.
I don't know if that's it probably doesn't make any difference in the grand scheme of things, but it just
No,
makes sure
but
that
you're right. I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
The section where they can build the house does slope to the north, though.
Right, yes, the section, yeah.
It's the one that's across the creek that slopes the other way. That
Right.
You have to
Yeah,
have
it's
a
sloping
mountain
to, yeah, it slopes to the north going to the creek, yeah.
So I don't know how that could be.
Right, how do you,
Mr. Chair, I have a potential solution.
Okay.
To take out the words "to the north." So just simply, it's sloping.
yeah.
I mean, because part of the property is sloping to the north, part of it is sloping to the south. The north property is sloping to the south, and the south property is sloping to the north.
Exactly.
So I could figure out a way to word all of that, or I could simply say, according to the preliminary plat application, the property is sloping is sloped with most of the property outside of the proposed building.
I think that'll work, don't you?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not trying to take the easy way out, but just trying to make it less wordy.
Let's take the easy way out.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, is there anything else? Do you have something?
Yes, sir. I have two little things regarding this report. On page 2, under number 7, or 8, excuse me, project background, it says the water is proposed to be provided by an individual well. Although the well is already installed, the well site will be reviewed and approved by DEQ of Montana Environmental Quality, Department of Environment. This is kind of leading into another question I had. It appears that under tab 30, they gave us, DEQ gave a certificate of subdivision plat approval. And in there, they approved the well. And this is kind of opening up another series of questions. But my understanding, the well and the drain field is already installed and approved. Or approved, not.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to respond
Yes.
to that? Okay. So the well was put in place, and the portion, at least, of the drain field was installed prior to the owners of the property obtaining an on-site wastewater treatment system permit and DEQ approval. So they started the process kind of backwards. They put the well in and put the septic system in, but didn't ever get the septic permit. You can't get your septic permit until you get DEQ approval. They couldn't get DEQ approval until they lifted the agricultural covenant that's in place on the property. So they do have the DEQ approval now, but I don't know that it's recorded, because typically it's recorded with the subdivision, the final plat. So it was kind of done a little bit backwards, and now they're going forward trying to mitigate some of the errors or missteps, if you will, by lifting the agricultural covenant, subsequently recording the DEQ, which then allows the sanitarian to issue the septic permit for the system that's already been installed.
So does that mean they have to go back out and approve it again? Or are they gonna look back at their record and just say,
I'm not sure how the sanitarian will handle that,
okay,
to be honest with you. I'm not sure if she'll require them to fully remove it. I mean, I'm really not certain. Or if they'll just, have to move some dirt to show her what's been put in the ground. Or maybe the septic system hasn't been fully put in the ground. I know that there were some pipes leaving the structure, but that septic system may not have been fully installed, actually, now that I'm saying that. I believe that the infiltrator system was still in the barn waiting to be put in the ground.
Okay.
Attached to what I used to call COSA is now Certificate of Subdivision Plat Approval, which is kind of confusing because there are sanitary restrictions on this lot. And they need a COSA rewrite to remove those restrictions. And so my understanding is they're going to have to resubmit this back to DEQ to get a COSA, or Certificate of Subdivision Approval, so that the sanitary restrictions will be removed so that they can install water and wastewater facilities. Is that right?
Mr. Chair, if you'd like me to respond to that?
Yes.
I don't know. I when it comes to the environmental health side of it, I really do defer, to the experts, and in this case, our sanitarian Megan Bullock, which I know she has been in contact with the Misters now. But I do not have an answer to your question.
Well, I'll have to think about that, but continuing on to the page 6 of the staff report, the third paragraph down, it says, all post-water generated stormwater will be detained within the subdivision boundaries. That's really not the case.
Okay.
A certain size runoff event is retained. That is shown, they're going to build a little retention system. That is shown on the lot layout, which is attached to number 30, tab 30. It's that little rectangle over in the corner there where the arrows are pointing towards it. But one of the things that I think Megan needs to address is if the post-water runoff flow can't enter the creek and can't flow over across onto somebody else's lot, even though it's undeveloped. So I think she'll have to look at that. Meaning you can't have all the water going over in the creek.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes.
So when I am reading this email here, it looks like on the bottom it says that this copy is to inform you of the conditions of your approval. So I don't think it's an approval already, I guess is, and maybe I'm confused there, but it looks like this would be what they need to do to get approval, but they don't already have approval. So I'm guessing that Megan would have to go back out there to do that. But again, I'm just basing off what I'm looking at. So maybe a couple brains together could help clarify that, but that's just what I see in the last paragraph of that first page of tab 30.
First page of tab 30.
Yes, from the DEQ email string. The very last paragraph.
Is this before Lita's signature?
Yep, right before. So it says your copy is to inform you of the conditions of your approval.
Right.
So from when I was listening to Charles, it sounded like you thought maybe this was already approved.
Yeah, because it's signed, and I'm not sure if it's in the original, if it was embossed. It usually off on page 2 of the this is a certificate of plat approval, which is confusing. It's usually embossed below, it says this date of the 11th of October 2024. Down here, there's usually a DEQ emboss, and if it's been recorded. So so it was just kind of a question of mine. Where we are with respect to DEQ.
So is there anything in the recommended conditions about going through this process again or not?
Mr. Chair, I believe condition number 2 addresses the DEQ. Well, not I believe, it does address the condition for the DEQ approval. So whatever that may look like, whether it's a resubmittal or if this is the DEQ approval that will be recorded with the plat.
Okay, did you see that? Page 10.
Yes, I'm sorry, page
Of
10,
this.
condition number 2.
Page 10, number 2.
Number 2, yeah. This is one of the conditions that they have to meet.
Right, yeah, that's a good statement, but I was just confused on this certificate of plat approval that we have. And if it's, how it relates to the COSA, so that the sanitary restrictions can be removed so that they can install the stuff, but apparently they've already installed the stuff, meaning the well and the septic system. I'm not sure if we need to clear that up at all before we proceed with the preliminary plat approval. Maybe a phone call with Megan would be all that's necessary.
Okay. Is there any more discussion on that?
Mr. Chair, can I suggest an amendment to page 6?
Okay.
Third full paragraph, the one that Charles was speaking about, all post-development. Can I replace the word all with most of the, so that it's not misleading that all of it will be retained, most of it will? Is that a fair statement?
That was on paragraph 3, right?
Correct, yeah.
Will that help things out?
Yeah, it's sufficiently vague.
See, I mean, the point is, there's nothing detaining stormwater now. What are the, I mean, is this just during construction that we're trying to keep dirt out of the creek? I mean, there's gonna be grass, there's gonna be things that come up. I mean, I've got a creek that goes through my place, and I've got grass and stuff there, and I don't farm to the creek edge. I mean, how far do we need to go here?
Well, the rules are that it just deals with the post-development. If it's just the lot and the house, then there is generally very little runoff from a very large storm event. But if they were going to build a big subdivision where they're going to install roads and things like that, then there would be a lot of runoff. And there would be a large post-development stormwater event. So since we only have a little house, barn, and a gravel driveway, there's not a lot of post-development runoff to be concerned with. Does that help?
Right, yeah, that's all I'm saying is.
You know, we're just concerned that with a bigger facility, that just the post-development, not pre-development, but post-development water is retained.
But this only works for this development anyway.
Right.
The staff report, so.
Right, and,
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Charles, are you talking about when you're talking post? Repeat what you were saying, post, say that one more time? Post.
well, before the development occurs, like now, it's called pre-development. And when they build something on it, whether there's the development, it's called post-development. In the post-development runoff, all the water generated from a large storm caused by the post-development must be retained up to a certain size. Yes?
Christie,
Oh, I'm sorry.
come on up to the mic. State your name, please.
Sure. Christy Heineman, Heinemann. I'm just curious if this is the responsibility of the DEQ to kind of go through and make these calculations. And because they have this approval, I just don't know if we're getting out of what we're approving here.
Okay. Is there a response?
Well, yes. On the certificate of subdivision plat approval, it describes the size of the retention pond. The last sentence on it would be the second page. And it gives a size. And so you're absolutely correct. This is not our purview, but we were discussing the staff report, and I was just making a point that all the post-development runoff is not retained, just a certain amount of it.
I see.
So they've already designed a stormwater retention pond to hold 351 cubic feet of water, and it's shown on the lot layout, and that is, if you flip to the lot layout, which is past Exhibit A, it's that little thing in the corner.
Yeah, right there.
Right there.
You got that? Yeah.
So I was just making a correction to the staff report, but you are correct that DEQ will review for the first time the water, wastewater, stormwater. That's,
So are we gonna make that correction and put most in instead of all post? Okay.
Duly
Alright.
noted.
Okay, anything else you wanna go over?
Yeah, I've got one question. On page 5 in the narrative, it talks about most of the property outside proposed building area having slopes in excess of 15%. But then on 11.7a, we have to make the specification that any areas greater than 25% are no build zones. So I had thought, so is that indicating that anything over 25% you could not level out and make a building site? Whereas 15% to 25% you could go in and excavate to make, because in our on page 63 in the regulations it does say 25% potential hazards such as flooding and steep slopes in excess of 25%. So I had in my mind that 15% had to be, you couldn't build on anything less than on greater than 15%, but you could excavate out to make a level area 2. But if it's 25%, you can't do that. Is that, maybe I'm making more work for us or something, but I'm not. It's not making sense in my head. And I was looking in. I don't know that it says it. I was perusing the applicable MCA, but I'm not seeing. Well, maybe chapter 3A. I didn't get to chapter 3A. Sorry. Am I going in the right spot? Chapter 3A 8?
Page are you on there?
40 in the
No, on your staff report.
11, 7, and then so I'm going back to I'm assuming that chapter 3A 8, small Romans 8, I'm assuming that's in the Broadwater County subdivision regs. I'm trying to find.
I'm gonna grab my regs back here.
If that's where it's stating, because there's a lot of things being covered here in these. I'm trying to see if that says anything about 15%.
Chapter 3.
3A8, the VIII, that's just talking about first minor. So that doesn't say anything about 15%. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I just don't know what it is.
So that is actually the wrong code, I believe. So I have the old subdivision regulations in front of me, which is not entirely helpful. But I do believe that this language is in the new regulations. I keep a copy stashed over here, and I realize now this is the old copy.
Okay.
So I need to update that. But I'm under design and improvement standards. And so I'm not even going to give you a page because this is old regulation, but chapter 5, design and improvement standards.
Yep.
And under lands unsuitable for subdivision. And I believe this is still in our new regulations. This version that I have was updated in 2023, and we updated our regulations again in 2024. So
Yes.
I'm sorry that I'm not able to give you code or pages because we won't match, but I believe it's the same language. And this section states, the governing body may find land to be unsuitable for subdivision because of potential hazards such as flooding, snow avalanches, rock falls, landslides, adverse soil types, steep slopes in excess of 25% slope, and on and on and on. And that's under a section titled Lands Unsuitable for Subdivision.
It's on page 63.
There's also one on 83 I found
Oh, wow, okay.
of 25. The proposed subdivision, so that's risk determination. Proposed subdivision located in an area with high density of fuels and or slopes greater than 25%. So
that's probably
that
for
harkens
fire.
back to
Yeah.
your, which one did you say, 64?
Page
63.
63, 5C.
And I imagine the language is very similar. This is Roman numeral 5C, so I know we didn't do a whole lot of changing of the verbiage.
Yeah.
We changed formats.
Right. This one's actual numeral 5C.
Yep. Yeah. And that's what I had found. So I guess the question is this something that we need to make the same going forward?
I see what you're saying. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But the discrepancy between 15 and 25, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Maybe this is something we could note to.
Then we can change this here for, would be chapter 5, right? What chapter are we in? Yeah, it would be chapter 5.
Yeah, so 7, on page 11, number 7, it'll be changed to chapter 5, C.
Can I offer a little clarification too?
Yes.
Bernadette Swenson from Schauber Surveying. I just wanted to clarify, the 15%, I believe, is a topo requirement. If the property is over 15%, you have to do a more detailed topo map. So I think that's why that 15 is called out, because if the slopes are within different ranges, you can, do more or less topo. So I think this is just calling out, it is greater than a 15% slope, but they're only doing the disturbed area with the topo. But I think it's a more detailed topo after 15% to identify the over 25% for no building.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? But I think
Right.
that's where those numbers come from. And historically, we have done where there's steep slopes, you do have to mark everything that's over 25% to no build zone. And I know the questions had come up before about building in those areas by flattening out. And, at that point in time, it wasn't allowed. But, so I believe you were correct. If it's like 15 to 24, it's possible to, it's not required by the county to make that a no-build zone. But anything over 25%, the county does require no-build zone.
Okay.
Clear as mud now, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Okay, any others? You have more?
Just a little correction. Under tab 8, it's saying that that the stormwater plans are addressed in the DEQ application, tab 29. That's not correct. Those are actually, I think, discussed in tab 30 possibly. I'm not quite sure on a requirement on stormwater plans, but that's also be addressed by DEQ, so it's just kind of a little. So if you go to tab 8, it says stormwater is addressed by DEQ application, see tab 29. But tab 29 is the FEMA study, which is a flood.
Yeah, it says tab 30 is stormwater, so, yeah, so that should be changed to number 30.
It's those different lists with different numbers, confusion.
Okay, anything else on the staff report?
Oh, probably could just add Dry Gulch canister site to the solid waste. That's on for number 3A. It's there too.
Yeah,
Still
they had
functional.
Townsend is only.
Yeah.
What page, sir?
4.
There it is. Yeah, Madam Chair, when I read that, or Madam Chair, sorry, I get used to the commission meeting. Mr. Chair, excuse me, when I read it, there's a Dry Gulch canister site that might be more approximate.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, that's a good suggestion to just say Broadwater solid waste canister site, period. Because they really are able to use whichever one they choose.
As long as they got a sticker, they can go to any of them.
That's right.
Yep.
And that's the end of that conversation.
Okay, anything else on the staff report? Okay, so do we have anything else on the subdivision itself in the booklet.
Mr. Chair, just a clarifying question. When it says variance request, it says fire plan variance, and I wasn't here last week, so maybe you guys touched on that. And then when I go to the tab, I think it's 33, it says there's no variance request. So on the application, it says there's a variance request, and then on 33, it says tab 33, there says it doesn't. So I just wanted to get clarification on that.
So what page were you on, or
So
what tab?
on tab 1, the application, page 10 is what it says. Number 12, it says variance requests, and it says fire plan variance. And then if I go to the next, page 12, under the same tab, tab 33 is variance requests, and then if I go to variance requests, it says there was no variance requests.
Mr. Chair, can I
Yes.
respond to that? And maybe Christy would like to elaborate, but when this application was originally submitted, we had a, no, not when it was submitted, I'm sorry. Probably, likely when she was completing the application, she was going to request a variance from the fire plan, and then the commission amended the regulations to allow for one-lot minors without the extensive fire plan or the extensive fire mitigation. And so that's likely why there was no variance request. But I think Christy would be the best person to answer that.
Yeah,
But I think we kind of had a switch in the scenario there.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Anything else in the plans or application?
I have one more.
Okay,
I'm gonna just reiterate my confusion with the certificate of subdivision plat approval and what is specifically required by DEQ at this, after this, if we gave preliminary plat approval. I think that Megan could probably, I'm not sure why that was even issued.
for
Tab 30,
tab 30.
right, and how, what's the status of the well and the drain field?
Do we have an answer for that?
Mr. Chair, again, I don't have a direct answer because I'm not the authority on the environmental health side of it. I'm certainly not the subject matter expert. That'd be Megan Bullock. But this DEQ approval, and it appears to be an approval since it does have the EQ number, and it's my understanding once those EQ numbers are issued that is an approval, even though this is not, this is a copy, so we're not able to see if this is an original document, nor are we able to identify the embossing, right, on this, because it's a copy. However, this was written, this DEQ approval was written prior to it becoming a subdivision. The reason it's going through the subdivision process is because there's an agricultural exemption in place. So I suspect that DEQ likely gave their approval unknowing of the fact, because DEQ and Broadwater County commissioners, they're not required necessarily to communicate with each other. I mean, obviously on certain matters, but DEQ is giving their approval. Broadwater County commissioners are being asked to approve the use of the land. So DEQ is approving the septic and well locations. The commissioners are asked to give approval of the use of the land for residential purposes. So they are similar processes, similar land, but independent of each other. One is above ground, one is below ground, essentially. So DEQ gave their approval, but the owners of the property were unable to occupy that property as a residential unit because it was approved for agricultural purposes only. Because when this lot was created, an agricultural exemption was used, which is to say it would only be used for agricultural purposes. That's why there is a covenant running with the land that will only be used for agricultural purposes. They built a barn and then had some thoughts that they may want to inhabit the barn. And when I say barn, it's a very nice barn if you drive up there, but they, temporarily, or I'm sorry, part-time residential use of this barn to inhabit it, which is why they decided then to go through this process of lifting the agricultural exemption so they could actually put in a septic system and occupy that space. So DEQ likely was not aware that there was this agricultural exemption in place because it's not what DEQ is looking at. They're looking at setbacks, right? They're essentially looking at math. Can the septic go here without impacting the creek or other exempt wells? Can the exempt well go here without impacting also the creek and anyone else's septic and drain field area? So I think that what was happening here is, the owners, they were doing what they thought was appropriate. I don't think they were doing anything with malice. They were going through DEQ to get approval, but also not realizing they needed to lift this agricultural exemption that was on the surface of the ground. DEQ is subsurface. That's my suspicion, and why this DEQ approval looks different than a COSA, a certificate of subdivision approval. I am not the authority to say that they would have to go back through DEQ to get a COSA, or if this stands. I can tell you that Megan Bullock, being very intimate with this whole project, her and I have been working with the NAPS, and in fact Bernadette Swenson was working with the NAPS for quite some time, trying to direct them through this process, and they had to make the decision on how they wanted to proceed, if they wanted to keep it agricultural or allow for any residential use. Obviously they decided that they wanted to allow for residential use, and thus the subdivision. So all of that to say they were working on the two independent processes, state and local, we refer to them, DEQ and Broadwater County, and now we're just kind of seeing them come together to be used for the same purpose. So Megan Bullock will determine whether or not this DEQ is appropriate, or not appropriate, excuse me, sufficient for her to issue the on-site wastewater treatment system permit, which will come after they receive final plat approval. Does all of that make sense? The DEQ approval will be recorded with the plat. Should you decide to recommend approval to the commissioners, should the commissioners decide to grant preliminary plat approval with conditions, condition number 2 will require that DEQ is recorded with the final plat, which will then allow the landowners to apply for an on-site wastewater treatment system permit. Megan Bullock, the sanitarian, will check the DEQ to make sure it's sufficient in order for her to issue that permit. But I am not the authority, so I can't fully answer your question.
Chairman, may I?
Yes.
Well, DEQ cannot issue a COSA without a preliminary plat approval. They need something from the county saying this is good, a preliminary plat approval, before DEQ can approve that. That's just a little bit of my confusion is, and then it says that this tract was originally created exclusively for agricultural purposes, and the change of use now is subject to subdivision review and lifting of the sanitary restrictions imposed by Title 17, Chapter 36, Subchapter 6, ARM. I'm just confused. I think we're out of step here. And
So can we put another condition? Add a condition that they have to make sure they cover what Charles is talking about? Or does number 2 actually state that in the conditions?
Mr. Chair, I think Number 2 covers that in the sense of kind of following the chain of events as they would transpire in order for the landowners, any landowners, to obtain an on-site wastewater treatment system permit. So, you know, in looking at this, yes, it does say that if you're looking at the DEQ approval, it originally created for agricultural purposes, and then go down just a few more, and a few more sentences or paragraphs, if you will. It says that the tract shall be used for one single family dwelling. I don't know how DEQ issued this.
Right.
I see what you're saying. I don't know how they issued it, because typically the preliminary plat approval is what allows DEQ to approve. In the absence of this preliminary plat approval, and it is just the preliminary plat approval, and it's frequently what happens, the signed version that the commissioners grant preliminary plat approval with conditions goes to the representative of the developer, that they send it on to DEQ, and DEQ is usually fired up and ready to finalize this. Then they can send off the final. I don't know how DEQ issued this in the absence of preliminary plat approval by the county. I don't have an answer for that. So there is a possibility that they may have to redo it. And by redoing it, it would simply be turning it into a COSA instead of a certificate of subdivision plat approval, or maybe that's their new verbiage. Again, I don't know that. But to answer your question, I still believe that condition number 2 is sufficient in that it covers it. The plans for sewage treatment and water supply submitted to DEQ for review and approval. The letter of approval shall be filed with the final plat. So the letter of approval, whatever the letter of approval looks like, will be filed with the final plat. If this is the letter of approval, the DEQ, the original will be filed with the final plat. And if Megan is satisfied with that, she will be able to issue the on-site wastewater treatment system permit. But to trace back the DEQ, I don't know how this happened. I'm not saying it was done in error. I just don't know how it happened that there was not a preliminary plat approval from the county that triggered them to give the approval.
Bernadette?
I don't know, this will clarify as mud again. But there was some issues with the creek running through there, in the drainage calculations and all at one point in time. And so I have no idea who sent a letter, but we had got notice from J.J. Connor, who is the one that prepared the DEQ submittal. And he contacted us and said that Broadwater County had sent Mr. Knapp a letter stating that he must first obtain DEQ approval prior to being able to obtain preliminary plat approval. And so that's why and maybe it was something Megan or someone wanted, because of the issues with the drainage, they wanted to make sure that it was feasible before they went through the preliminary plat. But because normally we don't do it in this order or have it done in this order, but this was just a really odd project that, and it just says Broadwater County, so I'm not sure exactly who the letter came from, maybe even the commission or something, but that wanted to see that they could get DEQ approval before they could obtain preliminary plat approval. And I don't have a copy of the letter, but this was just what we received. So that's why the landowners went ahead and had JJ submit it to DEQ to get to approval. Now, the DEQ may be holding it, before it can be filed until subdivision approval. Again, I'm not privy to that because we don't handle the sanitation part. But I do agree that I think the conditions of approval, nothing can be finalized with the final plat until the DEQ is in hand and can be filed, and they can't proceed with the septic system installation until they have a permit from the county, which Megan will make sure all that's taken care of. But I do know there were Megan was working very closely with the Knaps because there were issues up there with the creek and the mountain slopes and drainage and all of that, so. But that's way above my pay grade. Thank you.
Yes.
May I continue?
Yes, you may.
Well, the preliminary plat is showing the location of the wells. Okay, I'm really skeptical over that. Is that they would allow the wells to cross, the well isolation zones, to cross over onto somebody else's property. Usually, the well isolation zone is retained within the property. So if, I know they're going by this DEQ lot layout approval, but if Megan changes that now, we'll have to redo the preliminary plat.
Well, no, Bernadette Swenson again. No, our firm was also hired to do a well isolation zone easements from Knaps to the neighbors to the south. And we also did one from the property on the south where their well isolation zones go into his, I believe it's to the north of the property. But we prepared well isolation zone easements at 120-foot diameter, so it was slightly larger than the required 100-foot diameter. And that was submitted to DEQ also, that easement. But again, nothing's been filed yet because everything will be filed with the final plat. But we did prepare the easements for JJ, who submitted them to DEQ.
Whoops.
In
Got my feet tied up.
the easements say that they can't build anything within that isolation zone. They can't spray weeds. They can't do anything like that that could affect this well.
Yes. You can't have any sanitation, septic, storage of chemicals, all that. There's, the DEQ has a standard document, a paragraph that was on the
Right,
agreement.
yeah. In the county,
Pardon?
because it's a county road.
No, within the well isolation zone where it leaves,
Right, but it's also on county property too.
right. Yeah, no, I don't know. I know the county has not ever required, again, I'm into DEQ stuff that I don't know, but the county hasn't required well isolation zones or mixing zone easements over roads or highways in the past.
Because
I think, Charles, my house isolation, my well, probably isolation zone is on the county road too, and we don't have an easement for it. So I think that might be standard, and I would say that the easements that you're talking about are fairly standard easements to get in place for wells on other people's properties.
Right. With
Yeah.
if your mixing zone or the well isolation zone leaves your property, you have to have a signed easement with a landowner.
you might know, technically, when you abut a county road, you own to the center of the road, correct? Is that,
Correct.
yeah, so I own half of Flynn Lane and Nelson Road, technically. And so that's where, that also accounts for the landowners on either side of the road,
Right.
because they own to the center.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's just county road right away.
Okay, anything else? Clear as mud for you?
Yes,
So they still got to go through all the conditions anyway, so there's a lot of stuff that they're going to have to do yet. So, anything else on the plan? You have anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. So do we want to make a motion to accept the plan, the application, accept the application with conditions, or deny the application?
I motion to accept the plan with the conditions stated in the staff report.
Okay. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the application with the conditions. Is there any further discussion?
Mr.
Nicole.
Chair, point of order. Could your motion, or would you consider amending your motion to recommend approval with conditions, recommend approval or deny? Simply because I have to take whatever you're recommending
Right.
onto the commissioners. So accepting is great, but can you also, I don't know if you want to do it in the same motion or a second motion, that's all.
I motion to, oh shoot, what'd you say?
Recommend approval with conditions?
Yes.
Which is very similar to what you stated, it's just left out the recommending portion.
Okay, I motion to recommend approval with conditions stated in the staff report.
I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion to, as stated,
I am the guinea pig every time.
is there any other discussion on that? Any other discussion? Anything online? Nothing online? So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Very good. Good discussion. That's something we haven't had. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else under old business, new business, whatever? I guess this was new business, but. Any other items for discussion?
Mr. Chair, I do have one subdivision that, or another subdivision, excuse me, that has been granted sufficiency. And Christy is the representative on that project, so she has the binders here today, correct? That she would like to distribute to you. No discussion because it's not on the agenda, but
Right.
it is item for discussion, as in you'll be receiving the binders for this, and then we'll look at calendars for setting next meetings.
Okay.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
I don't know how much of a treat that is.
Thank you.
Much of a treat is making them.
That's
One more
fair.
for Dwayne.
I have 3.
She's got those over here, so I'll keep Dwayne's in my office.
Logan Minor subdivision.
Okay. Yep, perfect. Yeah, because I already have mine. So you actually can keep 2. Because then I'll just need 1 for Dwayne. And since we're not doing a public hearing, I don't need a public copy.
Okay, perfect.
So do we have any more comments from the floor? Thank you, ladies, for coming today.
Thank you.
Any other comments for the good of the order? I thought I silenced that.
I suppose this is a comment from the floor. In setting the dates for the Logan Minor subdivision, since it is a 1-lot minor subdivision, the county does have 35 working days, which is only 7 weeks. I like to give the commissioners at least 2 opportunities to review it. I'd like to give the planning board at least 2, although I know sometimes having 2 planning board meetings is challenging. So all of that to say, this was given, and I didn't bring my letter. Do you happen to know the deadline off the top of your head? If,
I have the letter in my email.
thank you. I'm sorry. I usually have a little sticky and I think it fell off. This was given sufficiency on the 26th, so 35 working days. Looks like August 15th. On or about August 15th, which means I would like it to go to the commissioners, their very latest meeting available for them would be August 13th and then August 6th. So to back that up even further for the planning board, we do have this room reserved for next Tuesday because that's our standard meeting. But is there, how many meetings would you like to have on this? I certainly don't have my staff report done since this was only given sufficiency last Thursday and I didn't give Christy a lot of time to get binders. I just knew you would all be gathered and it would be a good opportunity for her to distribute them. How many meetings would you like to have on this and when? Dallas, I know your month of July, you had already stated, was going to be quite busy. What are your thoughts on meeting next Tuesday? And I can have the staff report ready for you by then. Then you still have the remainder of the month of July for additional planning board meetings should you need them, or would you like to wait until, I guess we don't know what the availability is, July 15th, do we, Daleen? The hard part is figuring out the calendar for all of this. Okay, so there is availability. This room is available July 15th from 1 to 3. So you wouldn't have to come back next Tuesday. It would be 2 weeks from today.
Anybody have a preference? Sooner the better for you, or?
Yeah. Yes.
How about you, Charles?
I'm available I'm just painting.
If you're like me, anytime you can get away from that's good, right?
Yes.
So your two options are next Tuesday, July 8th from 1 to 3, or 2 weeks from today, July 15th from 1 to 3. Or you could even go all the way out to July 22nd from 1 to 3.
Do you want to do the 8th? Yeah. The 8th work is probably better for me.
July 8th?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Looks like we will set it for July 8th.
And I will get you my staff report. I better get back to my office and get to work. By the end of this week, I will get it to you so you have it for the 8th.
Okay.
In order to have some time to review it.
All right. Well, I guess we just decided when our next meeting was going to be.
I knew that was all piggybacking on it, but I wanted to make sure we were you knew my reasoning for the dates.
We didn't have anything else for the agenda for the 8th, right?
No, sir. No, we will need to discuss subdivision regulations, but
We have to have a working meeting sometime.
exactly, that's a
Yeah.
future problem.
Okay. So our next meeting will be July 8th, here, 1 to 3 o'clock again. Okay. Any other comments from virtual land, or did we ever get anybody to look?
Yeah.
Oh! Scary thought. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, fine people, for coming today.
Yes, thank you all very much. I know it's challenging to meet in the summer.